Hi, welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk. Again, John, Dave and myself are going to look back over our last minute bonus point clinching victory against Cardiff last weekend. Look forward, of course, to the big game in the Aviva Stadium against Munster and all the other Pro 12 action. So lads, 37-23 against Cardiff. Got out of jail with our bonus point in the last minute.
Yeah, we did kind of. It was a game that promised much, delivered some, ultimately kind of disappointed.
It was a bit like a McDonald's meal.
It was, yeah. Well, I'd say, yeah, it was actually. It was. It was a game that it was okay. It was, we played okay. We were neither good nor bad. The opposition were okay. It was just okay.
Do you know there was 5 of the lines from the first test playing in that match? Of the 30 players on the pitch in Brisbane, there was 5 of them. And the quality was pretty poor, really.
Quality was very poor. I mean, you look at the Cardiff front row. I mean, they're 2 props, 2 of the
seasoned individuals,
2 of the more sung about props in modern rugby, and they were taking a bit to the cleaners, to be honest.
By our arguably second choice front row,
by including disgracefully a player who was booed by his own fans before the match even started. Michael Bent.
Really?
Yeah, there was distinct boos heard coming from the terrace where we were when his name was announced, which is a disgrace.
Pretty shocking.
Exactly. But anyway, so there was that. I mean, they had a decent back row out. I don't know if it had a huge amount of effect, really. Certainly not until we weakened ours.
Yeah.
With substitutions. It was.
We had a very strange back row out for us. Anyway, we had 3 guys of almost equal height. I think we said it last week. It was like a South African back row or something. It was 3 identically sized, reasonably big guys. So who was going to do which job? Who was, none of them are amazing on the deck. None of them are, they all have. They're all good at a lot of the same thing.
They're all good all rounders.
And they're all good all rounders. So it was like we had three RoboCops out there, ready to kill. But
the thing about that is, I mean, Cardiff had 2 of the better groundhogs.
Well, I was about
in the
to
Pro
say
12,
that was the
and
interesting.
yet they still couldn't.
Yeah,
they still couldn't do that. I mean, Navidi, who was playing at number 8, is a 7 by trade, and a classical style 7 at that.
And Sam Warburton is a big poacher as well.
Is Sam Warburton,
Well, he didn't have somebody to do his what's your man's name?
The Lydiate role.
Lydiate.
Yeah.
He didn't have somebody to do a Lydiate job, chopping people down, so he could hop in over them. Which I think possibly made the difference. I mean, they didn't have the most balanced back row. What was your man's name? McCusker was playing 6, was he?
Yeah, he was. He wasn't overly impressive.
He's not Dan Lydiate, he's a decent Pro 12 player, but I wouldn't be hyping him up too much. And with those 2 other guys who were groundhogs, they in a funny way they had an unbalanced back row as well. So it was a battle of the unbalanced back rows, which
I think our back row is going to have to learn some balance because as things stand, that's pretty much it for the foreseeable future this season anyway. Certainly up until at least perhaps. Christmas, maybe McLaughlin. But you look at the balance of the team and you think, where does he fit in? Because the outstanding player so far this season has been Ruddock, and his more natural position is 6.
Yeah.
So you're kind of wondering, and then McLaughlin has the threat behind him in Jack Conan as well. So I mean, there's a lot of there are options there, but I see that back row. I don't see that back row changing a whole lot. Certainly not until Christmas, at least until we see who's coming back from what.
Well, we don't have a 7. We don't have Jennings. We don't have Sean
Jennings out
O'Brien.
for a month, right?
Yeah. That's when it'll be.
We have Dominic Ryan, who is I think he's a better 6 than a 7, but he has done a pretty decent job at 7.
One position that we're obviously quite well stacked in is loosehead, but Keane Healy got a bit of bad news. Richie Murphy said yesterday that he was out for 4 to 6 months with a very serious injury in his hammer. Pulled it off the bone, apparently.
Well, it's kind of, obviously feel bad for Keane, but it's kind of the brutality of professional rugby is that 10 years ago, would we have had a world class loosehead? 5 years ago, losing a world class loosehead would have been a fatal blow to Leinster's chances. Now, hi Jack.
I'd be more worried about our halfbacks than I would about our loose head prop, to be honest with you, and also our 7 as we just covered.
It's a position that we've managed to. I don't know whether it's good. Well, obviously it's good planning and good development, but we've managed to build into a position of strength. Both sides of the scrum.
Well, speaking of players who were booed uncharacteristically, that guy is absolutely fine, Loosehead, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, like the thing is, like if you're a professional
possibly
athlete,
not amazing on the tight head side, but still good enough.
Every time you see your name in the media, it's a negative comment against it. You know, whether it's a commentator or whether it's printed in the newspaper, or as Dave alluded, even some of the lads on the terrace giving him a boo. If you've any, it's a small minority. But if you've any professional pride, aren't you going to come out and say, I'm going to stick it to these people and show them what I can do?
Yeah.
You know, and in fairness to him, he has. Okay, he's not like Cian Healy. I'm sure he's the first to admit he's not Cian Healy, but he's a functional professional rugby player that can scrummage at Pro 12 level.
He is possibly the best third choice loosehead prop in Europe. Well, maybe not too long, but you know, certainly in the Pro 12, he'd be the best third choice loosehead prop.
Yeah, well, that's
by
the
a
thing.
distance.
If you're looking at that, I mean,
we've got Cian Healy and Jack McGrath. I mean,
the guys who are booing him, you know, are the kind of mental defectives who follow what happens, you know, in the press, and they take their lead from that. So I wouldn't be too worried. Well, I'd be worried about it because it's a disgraceful thing to do, but I wouldn't be too worried about them having, you know, breeding. But Bent, I think, went out. He fulfills an important role. Not everybody can't be the star guy. That's what people forget. Everybody can't be the star guy. Somebody has to be the guy who plays when the star guy's not there, and has to be good at when the star guy's not there, and has to keep things moving along. We've often said, I mean, the guys, when we lost the Pro 12 final to both Munster and to Ospreys, the first team, if you like, were really disappointed, but they weren't so much disappointed for themselves. They were disappointed because they'd let down the guys who'd kept the whole thing ticking over while they were glamming it off with the international team. It was the guys who'd kept the whole league programme ticking over that they'd let down. And those are the guys who are the important guys. If you're in a league programme, it's the guys who are going to play, you know, 20 games, 15 games a season. Not the guys who are going to play 5 or 10 that are the key guys. And Bent is going to be one of those guys, especially, I mean, if Healy's away injured and McGrath's away with an international duty, I mean, he's going to get 10 to a dozen games this season.
Yeah. And as we saw coming along behind him, we have we have Brian Byrne, Ed Byrne, who's
Prop Byrne.
Prop Byrne, okay, we call him Prop Byrne. It is Ed, but you know, there's a guy who had a decent first appearance for Leinster the other night, gave a scoring pass for our fourth try.
Scrummaged very well.
Scrummaged well at the at the end of a game with I think it was all 21-year-old front row, himself and his twin brother and Tadhg Furlong. Not
both
much more
from Carlow.
Not much more. Not much more than 21 anyway. So you know, isn't that great to see?
Yeah.
Personally, I would have no fear of seeing Michael Bent coming off the bench in a Heineken Cup game. Against any of our pool opponents anyway.
I wouldn't have a huge amount of fear of seeing Hooker Byrne coming off the bench in a Heineken Cup game. I've been very impressed with him.
He's pretty special.
Yeah, he's the real thing. But we saw I don't like hyping up schools players. Maybe because I didn't come from a school that's within the system, so I tend to stay away from kind of hyping up players that in the system.
Having said that,
when I saw the Burns when you saw them play, you just knew that those kind of, you know, there's players that you see playing, you just know. And the Byrne twins were players from the moment you first saw them. You knew they were going to be professional rugby players.
Well, speaking of guys that you just know when you see them, Mick McGrath had a good scored a fabulous try.
Where did he go to school?
I'm not sure.
The best little school in Europe. But
anyway,
he was all over the place, regardless of the try he took. I was watching him for 5 minutes during the match, and he was just ferocious. He was throwing himself into tackles. He was just a bundle of energy that wanted to get stuck in, and it's unusual for especially for a kid who's pretty much making his debut at this level.
Well, I think maybe the important thing is that he's not a kid making his debut. He's slightly older, and so he realises that this is his shot kind of thing, and he's not going to let it pass. I mean, I agree with you. I thought his energy was great on Friday night, and his desire, and you could see it in the try he scored. I mean, he showed both pace, he showed desire, and he showed awareness.
Yeah. Magic Mick, as he's fast becoming.
We'll talk about it when we see the try, but maybe that not being in the first flush of youth, as it were. Although he's not exactly old, what age is he? 22?
23, I think.
23. Yeah. But maybe having come from kind of taking the long way around, if you like, into the system, he appreciates it more.
Possibly.
Well, one guy who's been absolutely outstanding this season, you mentioned him earlier, was Ruddock, and the way he took his try in this game with just the amount of power that he brings into the game. It reminds me of Lawrence Delalio in his prime, just the way he runs at people.
Yeah, his physicality has just come on hugely in the last 6 months, especially, and he's just pushing people out of his way here. And he's a fair bit to do. It wasn't. It was by no means a simple run in or anything. Bit of pace there, throws your man out. Okay, he's not the biggest guy in the world, and scores with 2 guys hanging out of him. Like, you know, that's supreme confidence, athleticism, speed, power. He's got it all going on there. You know.
Yeah, there was 3 key elements to that try. There was the line, the pace, and the power. Obviously, the line to come onto the pass. We see it when the replay comes up. But I mean, he's a huge guy. I mean, you see it here. The line he takes to come onto the pass, pace he takes, and then the power to shove off, and then to take the double hit there.
Yeah.
But he's like with O'Brien, you know, out injured. I don't know for how long. He had an operation on his ankle, and now there's rumours that his shoulder's at him again. So, you know, Ruddock could be pushing for a place starting in the autumn internationals.
Well, having a guy who's a big, heavy duty tank. We don't have a tank at the moment with O'Brien out.
I can see O'Mahony going to 7 and him at 8, or him at 6
for Ireland.
Well,
quite possibly. I wouldn't be sure. I wouldn't be too certain about that. I think Joe Schmidt might have a different approach than O'Connor will. But O'Connor, the situation is O'Connor doesn't have a tank. That's the guy he has.
Yeah, well,
because O'Brien is out.
With Healy and O'Brien out, this is the guy we're looking to. You know, like it's very hard for us to win games with both of them out.
He's the Ben Ruddock have to stand up now, because you take out our 2 primary ball carriers, the emphasis is going to have to turn to the other 2 boys. You know?
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, they have to stand up and be accounted. I mean, in fairness to Ruddock, when other guys have been missing from the back row, he's always shown an admirable ability to change his game.
Of course,
to make up for it. I mean, we saw it in the games at the tail end of Joe Schmidt's last season when players were unavailable. He changed his game up. We saw it at the tail end of last season.
And he was criticised a lot for playing badly.
Yeah.
When he was just changing the game to accommodate O'Brien picking up speed at 7. You know, he was doing a lot of the deck work for him. But anyway, that's an argument that's going to run and run.
Yeah. So why don't we have a look at COS sensation?
Cinderella and her ugly sisters.
He showed an amazing amount of composure to score this, and just the fact that he has that nose for the try line. He has a lot going for him.
His try reminds me a bit of McFadden, that he just refuses to go down.
Yeah.
He just
once Madigan got that ball, you just knew it was on, though, didn't you?
I mean, that's Alex Cuthbert. He's running away from there. I mean, he's not. He gets
knocked down.
Yeah,
but he gets up again.
I mean, Cuthbert's not Swiss cheese, you know.
He's got. I've said this before, but he's got a lot of the Darcy things, like the low centre of gravity, the good strong legs,
low slung hips. Copyright Jerry Thornley.
The balance that he has, you know.
Yeah.
He had to get up from the ground there, but it was momentum that got him up as well, because he just carried on through the.
Well, it wasn't just momentum; it was the awareness to know that he could get up.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hit the ground, your first inclination is to set the ball back, because you don't want to give away a penalty for carrying, you know, for holding on. So the awareness to realise that he wasn't held. So, like, I mean, the first thing, he had the opportunity, he had the pace and the power to make the space for himself to take the tackle. But then he had the awareness to get back up again, and the will and the desire to get over the line.
He accelerated into that tackle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and you often see a lot of wingers slow down and take the hit, and as you say, Dave, you know, set up the play again.
No, he wanted that hit on his terms, and he took it on his terms. That's why he was successful in it.
And he did run through about 3 players after he got up as well, you know.
Well,
yeah, no, it was a very impressive try scoring. Or his debut try, as it was very impressive.
In fairness, before we overhype him too much, he's still got a bit to go, and there are other aspects of his game that
he is still what he is.
He's
still he is the exact same as was it George Watkins, the Cardiff were playing on the opposite wing.
A Premiership,
Principality Premiership. He was the top scorer in the Principality Premiership last season, and was elevating. Now we obviously, I think ours is working out better so far, but you know, both teams are in the same kind of position in that regard.
Well, why don't we have a look now at Gordon's try? Like this is, I think Godfrey had such a mixed bag of performance.
He did a lot of things wrong, but here's something he did right.
He does attack the gain line very well. It's like you said last season. I mean, Kiwis do that very well.
They always have the good basics.
What did you think of Buster Douglas's debut for us?
Considering the guy got off a plane less than a week ago, he integrated pretty well, you know. It wasn't nice little step, Jimmy, and nobody was stopping Gordon Darcy from there, not even two big lads. Back to the old balance and what'd you say? Low slung hips.
Low slung hips, copyright. Yeah.
He shaved his beard off.
Yeah, I actually saw him the next day and couldn't believe he was, you know, I thought it was his 12-year-old brother.
I mean, you see guys with beards like that. I mean, obviously he's given up all chance of claiming the Romanov throne. But people for 6
weeks at least.
Yeah. I mean, I have a bit of a beard, but it's not in that league, and people forget when a big heavy beard like that comes up, you forget how young the guy is underneath it. I mean, okay, he's not particularly young in rugby terms, but he's still a young man.
Now, this is our final try was, I'm not sure whether to be critical of Cardiff or to praise them for going for it. Like, it was 81 minutes on the clock.
We were both going for it, in fairness.
We were going for it, but we had the opportunity of getting a bonus point.
I'll take one point of view. I'll take I will argue the fact that Cardiff were wrong to take. Now, it's not necessarily the point what I believe in, but I would say that Cardiff were wrong to be going for it like that. They had the bonus point in the bag. They're a team that has struggled to win points in Dublin in particular. They've conceded 150 points in their 3 visits to Dublin. The last 3 visits to Dublin, including Saturday, with 145, I think, was the total. So to come away with a point was very, very a bit of a win for them, and they threw it away trying to get the draw. For what? For an extra point or two? Was it worth it?
Well, an extra point. I would argue.
That's the argument I'm going to make. I don't actually necessarily agree with it, but that's the argument I'm going to say.
Well, I'll put in the opposite argument and say, fair play to them for not lying down and going for the point. And
Corinthian fools!
Double fair play to them because it didn't work out and we ended up getting the bonus point. So they got a point less, we got a point more. But, had it worked out for them, we would have got 2 points less and they would have got a point more.
But if you look back on the whole 80 minutes of the match, their first try came from a very quick line out on the halfway line. Their winger kicked it through. Madigan went down in it 2 metre from his line, spilled it forward, and the winger followed up and dived on the ball. The second one...
Opportunist.
Yeah, the second one was a good move, and Warburton finished it off well with the help of hands by
McCarthy, yeah.
I'd
have disguised the forward pass or made a non-forward pass look like it went forward.
They didn't really create a lot through the course of the entire match, and yet they thought that they were going to run the ball from their own 22 in the last minute of the match to some way snatch a bonus point try. Like, I admire their attacking Corinthian spirit, but at the same time they're not France with Sella and Blanco,
Try from the end of the world.
I think that this is both a criticism and a benefit of the Pro 12 in that because there's no relegation, you can afford to be a bit more risky with that one bonus point. And it has benefit. I remember seeing Ospreys playing, I think it might have been Leicester in the Heineken Cup a couple of years ago, and they were deep into injury time, talking 85, 86 minutes of actual time rather than game time, of actual time being played, and Ospreys were just patient until they got their try. And I think that was something that you get from the Pro 12, not having to be...
Yeah.
I mean, if this was a league with relegation, I have no doubt Cardiff would have kicked that ball off the park.
Well, what about Jamie Roberts in the Heineken Cup semi-final against Leicester, who came back, the one that they lost on the kicks? He came back and scored 2 tries. At least one of them was in injury time.
Yeah. So there is that element of patience. But
then the other side of the coin is that while there mightn't be relegation, they could be in a situation where Connacht, let's say, are vying with them, and at the end of it, Connacht's the 4th Irish placed team and they're the 4th Welsh team, and they miss out on that European spot next season because
they've missed out on it this year anyway. But I suppose,
but no, next season, and they miss out on it on that 1 point.
Yeah, well, you see, that's the thing. I mean, that's why I'm saying there's arguments that can be made for and against. I mean, when I think that point may come. I think they'll regret it in the long term. I think that point may come back to bite them in the ass. Not necessarily just from Connacht. I mean, they could be in a position where they're up against another Welsh team. You know.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd be that close to Ospreys though. But the try itself, we looked at the try itself. Funnily enough, it started off with our line out. We were kind of swamping. We were swamping them, looking for this try.
Now, who picks it up? One of the Burns. The other Burn threw it. Now, okay, they lost it, but thankfully Cardiff managed to fumble it.
Managed to show a nice bit of incompetence.
There we go.
Nice to see
who's there? Yeah. Another Burn.
Nice step and pass out of the tackle.
It was actually Brian Byrne that made that pass.
It was a couple of guys who played together a fair bit on the Burns and McGrath had played together a fair bit on the A team, so he was obviously looking over his shoulder. Knew the man would be there. Nice to see Devin Toner still making those tackles in the 81st minute of a match. It shows that he's still going. You know, he's got good energy. Devin is he's the top lock now. You know,
pro show.
So that win moves us up into 5th position. We got our second, obviously, victory of the season. But like, there has been a growing kind of undercurrent of criticism for O'Connor. You know,
some of which is justified, some of which isn't.
Like, are we
possibly?
You know, are we gonna look at the aesthetics of how the team is playing? Because clearly we're not playing champagne rugby. We're not flashing the ball around as we did maybe under Schmidt.
If you think of the Heineken Cup final against Northampton Saints, and think of a brilliant second half comeback.
Yeah.
Right. Think of the wonderful tries we scored against Biarritz and Stade Francais in the Amlin Cup finals, or the tries we scored against Wasps. Then think of the try that Ulster had chopped off against Ironi, and think back to those matches that we scored those tries, and think how many of those tries would stand in today's regulatory environment. Very, very few.
What do you mean with the blocking?
With the blocking. Very, very few. So this is a point that's almost entirely ignored. Nobody in the media is addressing this point. And very few people who are watching the games are addressing this point.
The TMO rules.
The TMO rules have changed, and they've changed the game. And they've changed. What's our number one back move that we go to every time? 9 times out of 10, what's our number one move?
A wraparound.
The Gaffney loop, as we term it here. Forget it, right? Unless you do that so far behind the gain line as for it to be, almost ineffective. That's gone. So what we have to do is we're into a new kind of a paradigm in terms of how we plan our games. And one thing that's been forgotten, now I'm not saying this is because there are criticisms, but one thing that's forgotten is we've had pretty much the same playbook since 2000. When Alan Gaffney left us, he built a set of back moves and Matt Williams, and then Joe Schmidt came in and took him on to the next level. Joe Schmidt actually had a very, very simple kind of set of plays. There weren't very many of them. They were very, very simple.
But what Joe Schmidt did was he had this team drilled to an inch of their life, where they knew exactly what they were doing. Does O'Connor have
that doesn't matter?
Have we seen that in this team?
The Leinster team could go out and run moves with even greater precision than Joe Schmidt had them run them, and the TMO would call them back
for crossing. Or
that
whatever,
nobody's talking about this at all.
Yeah,
and I can't understand why.
Well, it's part of the reason that defences are back on top.
Yeah.
Having said all of that, there is some justification.
That's the other point.
In the criticism. The other thing you would have to say is we're struggling to find a functioning set of halfbacks. Jimmy Goppert turned out to be better than we expected when he arrived, but possibly not as good as we'd hoped. In consistency terms, he's played 10 in every game this season.
Is he a bit of a lame duck because
Johnny's he is now that Johnny Sexton's coming home? But the point about him is he was signed to be a backup for Ian Madigan, who had the season of his life, and when Joe was leaving, I'd say his plan was big up Madigan, build him up, have this guy coming in who could smooth out the rough edges and manage games and stuff like that, and would be a good backup out half. When he got here, he kind of shocked us all by playing a bit better than we expected. Now, he's still not a world beater. He has his downsides, but you know, that little break he did in that game, it shows you the flashes of stuff that he has are pretty decent. Unfortunately, after the season from heaven that Ian Madigan had, he didn't kick on from that season for whatever reason, and he didn't have as good a season the following year. Now, you could say that there were times during that season when he should have had the arm around him rather than the boot up the hole, but you know, that's water under the bridge, unfortunately, at this stage. I would be of the school of thought that thinks, he should have got a bit more game time at 10 last season. But having said that, there's an awful lot of pressure on guys like Matt O'Connor to win. But
if you think back to last season, there was games that Madigan was kind of on the bench and he was presumably going to come on for Gosport if everything was going according to plan.
And he had to come on.
Because Lottie Dacoury, I remember one particular game, got injured very early within maybe 10 minutes of Glasgow away, and Madigan had to come on. He came in at full back, centre, you know, all sorts of different, and he didn't get an opportunity to run the show from out half.
Why did we never try Jimmy Goppert at full back? Is a question.
So just to address that, at that point he never got an opportunity to run the show.
Yeah, that's true.
He did get plenty of opportunities. I mean, he started 13 matches at out half last season, wasn't that correct? I'm not sure. I think somebody mentioned that. He started, so at that time he didn't. So there was swings and roundabouts. I mean, part of the problem is that, you know, both our out halves turned out to be pretty blah.
I mean, they both had flaws in their game. Slightly different flaws, but a lot of the same flaws as well. Missing touch.
I mean, there's not one of them fit to lace Johnny Sexton's boots. I mean, that's the reality of the situation.
Well, not currently. But the other point that a lot of people raise, which is valid, I think, is that Goppert is 31 nearly now, and Madigan is 25, and Madigan has a lot more headroom to improve than Goppert's as good as he's gonna get. He's only gonna slowly get slightly worse over the next few years because his base will go, which is a big asset in fairness. Whereas Madigan is probably a year or two away from his prime. So and he has this thing that he's at 12, he's at 10, he's at 15. I've seen him at 13. He's all over the shop.
I've said it before. I think come next summer he won't be at 10 anymore.
Well, he won't be at 10 very much, but that still means he has to play at 10,
The question is then, is he going to get squeezed between younger players coming up? I mean, he'll be 26. Obviously, he's not going to get picked and headed the Irish starter. I don't see anyone challenging Sexton for that role.
But
so there's guys coming up behind. Cathal Marsh is coming up, is looking good.
But he might try to make a niche for himself at 12, perhaps, or 13.
I believe that is his best option, and I think that's the best option both for him and for us. To be honest with you, I mean, to be brutal, I don't care about Ian Madigan. I care about Leinster. I'm just been absolutely brutal about it. And I think for Leinster the best thing is for Ian Madigan at 12. I think, but if I were to look back, take the opposite view and say, all right, screw Leinster, what's best for Ian Madigan? I think Ian Madigan at 12 is the best. I think that it's a. But I mean, one thing that really disappoints me, and it's something. I mean, our kicking is fucking atrocious. It really is. That really annoys me. I mean,
kicking in general, it's just poorly executed.
It's poor. And there's no reason for that.
Is that the coach? Is that the players? It's obviously some kind of a combination of the two. I mean, Matt O'Connor didn't boot it out on the full. Matt O'Connor didn't miss touch from penalties.
And it's certainly not a tactic.
It's certainly not a tactic to do that. The cross kicks that we're trying a lot. We were trying those a lot in Johnny Sexton's day as well. Yeah. But just we had Shaggy out there, or we had Issa out there who could jump 3 times his height, jump tall buildings with a single bound.
And I think there's another thing to remember. I mean, I was saying about look back at the second half of the Heineken Cup final against Northampton. Look back at the tries he scored against Stade Francais, against Biarritz, and look at the players who made all those plays. Mm-hmm. They're all gone.
They're all gone. Exactly.
Yeah. But then you got back in 2 seasons ago in Joe Schmidt's last year. I think we came second in the league. Mm-hmm. Or we won the final against Ulster, but we came second in the league. We won 18 of our 24 games that season, and we got 78 points in the regular season. Last season, when we did top the league and obviously won the final, we won 19 games. We drew one of the games out of 24, and we scored 82 points in the regular season, which is 4 points more than we did the previous year.
But we didn't do it curing cancer with a brush up our arse, sweeping the floor, and juggling fire while we were doing it.
In a pure statistical point, I mean, there's no argument.
Well, there's an element of the summers were always better when I was young about it.
Yeah.
The rugby was always better when Joe Schmidt was there.
It didn't matter who the hell we hired after Joe Schmidt. We were never going to get as good a coach.
Yeah.
Then Mick Dawson made the cardinal sin of going out and signing a Leicester coach. And sure, aren't Leicester only Munster with English accents?
I think
but that is an attitude that exists amongst our fans. There's an element of our support base who couldn't care less if we never won another game, as long as we played lovely flowing. Their idea of a fucking hero is Gary Ella. That was the best Leinster team because they played lovely. Okay, they lost every game, but they looked great doing it. I mean, fuck that.
You're perhaps pushing it a little bit too far the other way now.
No, but you've seen those people. You've spoken to those people. You know those people exist.
Yeah. Well, I think there was some of his decisions that he made last year were flawed. Like, I think that picking Zane Kirshner or putting him on the bench in that quarter final down in Toulon was an error of judgment.
Yes, I think so as well.
Especially when you saw the form of him leading up to the final.
Yeah.
Also, I think persisting with Lottie Takuri was almost like, well, I've signed this guy. I want to go and continue playing him. He clearly wasn't fit. He's gone back to rugby league and he's still making, his team's playing in the final. Yeah, exactly. No, what I mean is that he
scored a try last week.
Yeah, that he's still at that level, but he wasn't fit last season to play for us. But O'Connor seemed to persist with him and even wanted to go and re-sign him.
I think he pushed him back too soon. When he first got his injury, he got the worst injury you can get in terms of a quick heal, which is the hammer. And I think he should have. O'Connor, I don't know why he came. I can't say O'Connor forced him at gunpoint back onto the pitch, but he came back too soon and re-damaged it. And once you do a hammer twice, it's a significant problem. So we never really got anything out of Lottie Takiri, and O'Connor should have just sat him out once the hammer went the first time. He should have sat him for a month.
Well, now we're seeing him. The player who has played the most minutes for Leinster this year is, including pre-season games, it is Darragh Fanning. Flangio, what you call him now. Anyway, I've begun to see why. In some ways, yes, people are going to criticise the guy, but he was doing some pretty decent kick chasing. He was doing some good solid work in that game. And a game in which a lot of people didn't shine. He had one of his better games, I thought.
How many times have you heard this comment? If only, insert coach name here, we'll go down and watch some AIL rugby. They'd see there's some great players there instead of going out and signing some high-priced bloody foreigner on a short-term contract. How many times have you heard that?
At least once today.
Yeah. Right. How many? What happened when Matt O'Connor brought in Darragh Fanning? Criticism, because there was people out there. What?
We didn't sign a big name foreigner. We got him
because people had an agenda about Matt O'Connor. I genuinely believe people had an agenda about Matt O'Connor.
Well, in fairness to him, he's given you said he also signed McGrath.
So I mean, he's doing all the things that other coaches have been criticised for not doing, and he's getting criticised for doing them.
Yeah. Well, there's also a young hooker.
That's right. Yeah.
Moran, is it? Tyrone Moran, who we haven't. I think he played in one of the pre-season games. He's another AIL guy. Last year we had Martin Kelly, who's been signed by Munster, tight head prop. There's players coming through the AIL, so somebody's obviously watching. Maybe it's not Matt O'Connor, but somebody in the Leinster organisation is watching the AIL, and that's great to pick guys. They're always going to do a solid job in the Pro 12 at least.
But it is.
And if you're lucky, Mick McGrath could turn into something. Maybe he won't, but
it is a demonstration of the criticism that exists, though, and the hypocrisy of it. Now, having said that, Matt O'Connor has made. We talked about the kicking. We talked about the Zane Kirshner decision. I think he wasn't quick enough to change the tactical approach against Toulon when Toulon's tactical approach changed by Johnny Wilkinson getting injured. That changed the game for them entirely. Their game changed because I think that they would have played a very conservative game if Wilkinson had stayed on the pitch. It would have been quite tight and power based. With Gitto on, it was they just went wide all the time, and we weren't ready for that. And I think we were too slow to change to take that into account. And that's a criticism.
Something you can put at his door as well.
Point the finger at the coach. Tactics are his job. and we didn't have the right tactics on that occasion. So there's accusations, there's criticisms there, but a lot of the stuff is based on I don't know. I mean, we're not winning well enough.
Well, anyway, there's a lot more of the season to go, and we'll have a full review later on in the season.
Do we know our best 10, 12, 13 combo for the I can't believe it's not Heineken Cup?
Well, see, there's that is a huge criticism. That's a good question and a criticism of O'Connor. I mean,
it looks like it's going to be Goppert, Madigan, and Darcy, but
we're 2 years into his reign, and we still don't know who the best. There's still arguments over out half. Now, I think the best 10, 12, 13 is the one you just named, because I just think that our resources are best utilised.
There are arguments for other things as well,
I mean, if you put Madigan in there, who do you play 12? Darcy, who do you play 13? You're going in with Mackin. Yeah. You're taking. You're beginning. That's another option, but you're changing the whole. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we obviously have to look forward to the big game in the Aviva Stadium next weekend. Play Munster. In some respects, that the phony war is kind of over. September is always that tricky kind of month where the full teams are. Some internationals have been rested, but pretty much the season opens up now. However, both teams kind of go in with similar enough records. Both 1-2 lost 2, and then Munster have lost both two home games. Also, the Ospreys and Glasgow are forging ahead. They're a good few points ahead. So whoever loses this game, it's not a disaster for us. We still don't want to be the gap to be.
Well, obviously you don't want to lose. I mean, Munster. I mean, the similarity on points.
It'd be nice if Munster could lose it.
Yeah, and I think we'd be doing all we can to encourage them to do so. I mean, the similarity in points is not matched by the similarity in how those points were gained or lost. I mean, we lost an Interpro and took a bonus point from it. We lost away to the second best, or to the runners up in the league last year, and took a bonus point away from it. Munster lost 2 matches at home.
Well, also though, the funny thing about it is, like, if you look at, we have a fairly crap record over in Galway. Munster have lost to Connacht once in the professional era, as far as I know, and that was 2008 in a slugfest. They had a couple of draws. They just don't lose to Connacht, so they'll probably go to Galway at some point in the year, no matter what shape they're in, and beat Connacht, because that's what they do. We haven't lost at home too often, and we haven't lost to Munster at home in 6 years. In fact, their record against us is not looking so hot. In the last 13 games, they've won 3, all of them in Thomond Park, 2 of them in the 11 season, and 1 of them last year. That's a lot in 13 games. Having said that, as Dave says, absolutely every time we go into this fixture, all bets are off when you go into an Interpro.
Form is out the window.
They could hockey us. They could, it'll probably be a slugfest. We're probably favourites, but until the final whistle goes, I won't be. It'd be just like them to come up and beat us when they're doing so bad and they're on the floor so much.
But the one thing that you would have to worry about Munster is
the complete lack of quality in their team.
I agree with you.
There is.
I was going to say that, but you've got Donnacha Ryan, Keith Earls and Peter O'Mahony out injured.
Yeah.
The quality.
Their best players are injured, and they've got 1 or 2 other, Conor Murray, obviously Paulie, and 1 or 2 other fellas, but the rest of them aren't
of the same standard
of the standard of excellent players that Munster produced for.
There are guys who will start
years.
Munster's Heineken Cup games, or I can't believe it's not Heineken Cup games, right? Who wouldn't get a game from Munster in the Celtic League,
correct,
or the Magnus League, right? I mean, and they'll be starters.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about. I mean, they made a big deal about signing Robin Copeland. No, sorry, he wouldn't get a game from Munster in 2006, 2007. He wouldn't have made the matchday squad in a game against Cardiff.
He would be about the 5th or 6th choice back rower, I'd imagine.
He wouldn't do it.
And you had the likes of Quinlan, Leamy, Wallace, Foley.
Yeah. And it's not. That's just one example of a position that Munster were up against the Ospreys, right? Ospreys lost their best. The Ospreys back row lost their best player. 20 minutes into the game, and Munster still got wiped.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of talk about CJ Stander, but CJ Stander, he only performs in very narrow areas of the pitch. I've said it before. Yeah. I mean, he's a great, aggressive, explosive ball carrier. If you want a guy to get over the game, over the try line. But for the actual kind of,
the nuts and bolts work,
the stuff that happens in the other 90 metres of the pitch, I mean, he's not all that special. I mean, it's not that he's lazy or he doesn't try it or he doesn't do it. It's just that he doesn't. It's not special. He wouldn't get into that back row.
Robin Copeland, perhaps another guy who looks great with the ball in hand, can throw fellas out of his way.
I think Robin Copeland at Cardiff was the world's tallest dwarf. I think there was a certain element of that syndrome there. I mean, that Cardiff team was a really bad team with a really bad attitude, and he was a decent player with a good attitude.
Did they beat Tulano in the Arms Park?
A stopped clock tells and stopped clock tells the right time twice a day, as to quote Oscar Wilde. But he was a good player with a good attitude in a team full of lazy good for nothings, basically.
Yeah, well, I beware the wounded beast that is Munster. I'm just something in the back of my head won't let me relax.
I generally agree with you on
this.
that, and I don't like
logic.
I don't like to be a hostage to fortune. Logic dictates. I mean, the wounded beast has to have claws. The wounded beast has to have teeth for you to be aware of it.
Fair enough.
Do Munster have teeth and claws? And that's the question. I mean, you look at their team. Felix Jones is back, who's a big win, having him back. They'll have Johnny Murphy. It kind of frees up Johnny Murphy. They have Zebo.
They don't have a whole lot going on in the centre.
They don't have a whole lot. The centre.
Dennis Hurley and Andrew Smith or something.
10, 12, 13 is their big problem.
Very weak.
We could well see a situation where they go with Keighley, Hanrahan and Smith.
Apparently, Keighley and Hanrahan both have a similar kind of chronic injury in terms of that's exacerbated by their kicking. Can't think of the medical name for it now, but they've been carrying this through the last season. And Blayendale coming in was supposed to free up at least one of them to kind of
heal,
exactly, and they'd be a bit of rotation.
Probably a groin thing, is it?
It is a groin thing. Yeah. And now that's not going to happen, so they're going to have to struggle on through another season. So whether they ever do play Keighley and Hanrahan at 10 and 12, which to me is their best option.
Yeah, it's the best use of resources. And that allows them to play Smith at 13 or Johnny Murphy at 13. I mean, he is their best centre, according to Excel. But it also frees him up to play on the wing, on the opposite side to Zebo. And he is a very good player. I mean, Johnny Murphy, there's nothing spectacular about him and nothing flash, but he does the basics very, very well.
What did that spreadsheet say? He's the most versatile player they have?
Oh yeah, without question. I mean, he's an extremely versatile player, but he's more than just a versatile player. He's actually quite good within that versatility. But you look at them, you look at the front row.
Doesn't have the pace on the wing, though.
He doesn't have the out and out pace, but he's clever enough. You look at the front row, you wonder what are they going to do? They're going to go. I mean, Kilcoyne, is he back?
Apparently,
is he going to be back for 80? That's the question. They'll go with both on the other side.
Yeah. Logic dictates that we should win this game.
Logic, as we've often said, logic flies out the window.
I know, but it's when 50 minutes or 60 minutes come and we make the changes and we can bring on pretty much a brand new front row that, admittedly Keane Healy isn't there, but still.
We should have Ross and we should have Moore. So the tight head side is looking decent, and Jack McGrath and Michael Bent again. I wouldn't feel a bit of panic over either of them. So, Strauss is allegedly back, so he'll appear off the bench looking to tear up a few trees and get into people's plans.
Is this game has the intensity? I remember that. Like there's 40,000 tickets sold for it. Like a couple of seasons ago, we probably would have been close to a sellout. Certainly, the last time I was down in Thomond, not last season, but the prior season, it was far from full. But I remember going, maybe in 09, 10, 11, it was jammers. You couldn't, you couldn't get a space unless you were there an hour before kick-off. Just
the edge gone off the fixture.
Has it a little bit because
we've won 10 out of the last 13.
Do we need Munster to be a little bit better? So there's
a couple of factors. First of all, there's that exact point you made. I mean, for a derby to be something that matters, you have to have two relatively competitive teams. And the results over the last 13 games have not done the game any favours. Second, there's kind of an element that the game against Munster isn't kind of a deciding game in terms of the league anymore. That a game against Ulster is a more important in terms of its result within the shape of the league. So there's that. Now, the fact of the matter is, a game against Ulster is never going to fill the Aviva.
Simply because there isn't as many Ulster
because there
expats.
Simply aren't as many Ulster people in Dublin and surrounding areas as there are people from Limerick, Kerry, Cork, Tipperary, whatever. So, I mean, you can't move that game to the Aviva. It stays in the RDS unless it's a big final or whatever. The game against Ulster is always going to stay in the RDS. I will declare an interest in saying that I was involved in marketing previous versions of this match, and I don't think it's been marketed as well in the last year or two than it has been in the past. I think I think the marketing campaign, the posters, etc. I mean, I know I'm kind of bigging up myself because this is my own particular area as a designer, but I think that the design work and the posters and stuff have just been okay. It's just the next game. This is the game against Munster. This is the splash page for the game against Munster. The game's over. Put up the splash page for the game against Cardiff, kind of thing. Whereas
they always had a few decent taglines.
There was always the FIFA, the Aviva,
a bit corny, but grab your attention.
Classic, the Grand Classic was another one. There was bus, radio, TV, the whole thing. I don't think it's been marketed as strongly. Maybe the feeling is that it doesn't need to be, that they will get to. I mean, for all I've been saying about the marketing, they've still got to 40,000 tickets
they
sold.
Have, but there was an article on I think on Leinster Rugby's website yesterday. Mick Dawson, and he was kind of saying, well, there was actually 38,000 tickets sold yesterday, but look at the achievement that we've done from 10 years ago. We played in front of 6,000 in Donnybrook. Yeah, that's it's a great growth, but that growth happened after 5 years, not 10 years. Yeah. And after 10 years,
it's what have you done in the last 5 years, kind of thing.
And that match, it was 5 years ago we filled, admittedly now, a semi-final of the Heineken Cup. We filled Croke Park. Now we're struggling with half the crowd.
It's never. Go on, you go.
The attendance last week, something I was going to mention earlier. Apparently, it was the lowest attendance in 3 years at a Pro 12 match.
It was 12,000.
It was just over 12,000. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean physical bodies at the game. That means tickets sold. So what that is really pointing to is it's possibly our lowest season of season tickets for the last maybe 3 to 4 years.
I think that the figure that was given was actually we always look out and we look at the corners, and I think there was about 12,500. We were discussing it at the time. We said about 12,500.
Well, it was 12,300 something. Yeah. We've had more season ticket holders alone than that. So if you take it that there has to be somewhere,
maybe they're reporting it differently. Maybe they're actually saying.
I don't think so.
No, unless the league has changed its regulation, then they're not. So. Because there's no way they could be, not with the Munster.
No, but I know, but maybe Leinster are, releasing
the thing about it is that there has to be almost 1,000. Doesn't have to be, but there's probably somewhere in the hundreds, probably in the high hundreds, people who bought tickets especially for the game, which means that season tickets must be down the guts of 1,000 since our peak.
Yeah,
our peak was over.
I can see that being the case.
Yeah, but put it this way. If Leinster Rugby don't announce that this year there's 14,500 season tickets,
it's down.
It's kind of down because they're not going. They're kind of.
Leinster Rugby were always very eager to trumpet of how many season tickets they sold,
exactly,
and they haven't in the last 2 years. So I'd say that it has dropped a certain amount in terms of just in line with the amount of people spending less money on consumer spending on entertainment is down. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Possibly. Also,
water charges.
No matter who you're going to get, it's like trying to follow the Beatles on stage after following Joe Schmidt and Sexton and Issa and all these people. It's there's inevitably going to be a loss of
and as well,
fans.
There was a lot of uncertainty, especially around the time that the season tickets went on sale. We didn't know what the story was with the Heineken.
I think a huge thing that people forget is that the reason why one of the biggest things that affected that attendance was the match was on a Friday night. Leinster have sold the Leinster experience as a family experience, a family day experience. Yeah. If you've got just think about it, right? Daddy goes to the match, brings Junior and Little Miss Junior to the game. There's 3 people. Game's on Friday night. Daddy goes on his own, has a few pints. There's your attendance down by 2/3 instantly.
Okay.
And I think we've got 5 Friday night fixtures this year.
Friday night pictures. Nobody wants them except for Ulster, funnily enough.
It's to do with the it's to do with the TV, obviously.
Oh yeah.
If Sky aren't choosing the game, then it has to be on Friday.
It doesn't necessarily have to be on Friday. Like they could play it on Saturday, but not have Sky showing it.
Yeah, but if Sky,
then I think
it's more likely to be on Friday. Yeah. DG Carr have the slot,
and we do want to be on television. I mean,
yes,
that's important for the brand. But I just think there's a whole load of there's a load of different effects I mean, obviously the rugby isn't as good as it was. It's one effect. It's a Friday night factor, which I think is huge.
Let's not forget. I said it earlier. There's an element of the summers were warmer when we were kids and all that, but the rugby was bloody good. You know, like that. Those seasons up in 2011, 2012, 10, 11, and 11, 12 were incredible seasons. Like, no matter what you do and who you get, it's very difficult to get back to that.
You have to remember that we were watching the best club side in the modern history of European rugby play the best rugby that side had ever played.
So
so I mean, it was
sustain that.
And watching the best player ever to play rugby.
That was Brazil 1970. But look what happened in 1974.
Yeah, Germany won the World Cup, beating Holland in the final.
Yeah, and what happened to Brazil?
Not a lot.
Yeah, well, why don't we just look back over some of the other fixtures? There was one result really stood out for me, and that was Zebre beating Ulster.
Yeah.
First victory for Zebre over an Irish team.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to see that game. It was a dreadful game. Ulster were appallingly bad. Carlo Damasco was a bit of a disgrace as a TMO, but in fairness, and Fitzgibbon was Fitzgibbon.
All bets are off when
he wasn't amazing.
All bets are off when he swings onto the pitch.
But Ulster did not deserve to win the game. They weren't robbed. It was pretty bad performance. And well, I'm glad it was Emrod and Nuss that lost to Zebre for the first time. But maybe it's good for the league. But it was a bit of a sad day.
But one thing that struck me when I was looking at the teams, Best was on the bench, and obviously Ruan Pienaar is injured. But you take those two guys. They have a few injuries in their team, like Henderson, and they've obviously lost Muller and one or two other notable
luminaries.
But if you take Best and Pienaar out of their team, even though they can start with Gilroy and Bow and Cave and Jackson,
no, you're right. They're
rudderless.
It's just leads back to what we were saying about Leinster. Without a decent functioning set of halfbacks, and Owen Redden didn't have his best game, for Leinster, and without Paul Marshall, good and all as he is not Ruan Pienaar, and Paddy Jackson has always been kind of like, he's a great young player, but he's always been very dependent on Pienaar, especially
to steer him through matches.
Yeah, less so as time has gone on, but certainly a year or two ago he was always dependent on him. So having that fulcrum, and look at as an example, look at the Leicester game in the Heineken Cup where Pienaar scored every single point and basically pulled the strings, swept the field and served behind the bar all at the same time. That kind of level of performance is what they're missing.
Ulster probably thought they could get through a game against Zebre.
Well, in fairness,
without Ruan Pienaar and Rory Best. Unfortunately, Declan Fitzpatrick set out to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, retaliation is wrong. You see, you should never do it. That's the thing.
He was apparently gouged.
The claim players always make when they get sent off against a French or Italian team is I was gouged.
Maybe there's a reason for that.
It's always yeah, there is, alright.
Another result was it was Glasgow against Connacht. Now Glasgow came away with the bonus point, but it wasn't a foregone conclusion as it might have been a couple of seasons ago. And
but on the other hand, it was Glasgow's second team.
Glasgow's second team is pretty bloody good.
Oh, it is. No, that's the point. Glasgow have made it, but they dropped. Was it 12?
Okay.
Yeah, maybe their entire pack.
Yeah, no, they didn't have the Fijians. They didn't have, but most of the guys they left out were injured.
Yeah, well, they were without 12 players that would be considered their first choice. So not so much. I'm not so much talking about Connacht, but talking about what Glasgow now have, which is what a lot of teams in the league didn't have, that Leinster and Munster, and to a lesser extent, Ospreys had, which was strength in depth. Glasgow now have that, and that's the most important thing when you're playing in a league, is strength and depth.
Yeah.
So anyway, Connacht play Cardiff at the weekend at home in Galway, so they have another opportunity to get another win under their belt, which would be a magnificent start for them.
Haven't seen Cardiff last weekend. I can't see any way Connacht won't win.
I think Cardiff, they have a new coach who's a Kiwi who I wouldn't say would take a lot of crap. He's the guy who didn't take any crap from Mananu and a few other luminaries, unless I'm mixing them up. He was at the Hurricanes.
Right. Yes,
so I can't see him accepting the phoned-in performances that that Cardiff have been given in the past few seasons. Plus, they've a lot of new players that are upgrades. A lot of them on some of their own. Okay, they've lost Lee Halfpenny and blah blah blah. But you know, on paper they should be doing well once they get it together and click, and they will eventually do that.
I'd say Cuthbert must be just going, what am I
doing here? Yeah. But he's a funny guy. Like, I mean, he can be brilliant on his day, and then he can be anonymous on another day. You know,
If it wasn't for the fact he'd find himself in trouble, I'd say he'd love to be playing for an Irish province. I mean, all his mates seem to be the Irish players. He seems to spend an awful lot of time here.
He was out with Zebo and Murray, wasn't he, that night?
Well, he was, but ignoring that, I mean, he's...
No, what I mean is that he was mates with them.
He was.
He went on holidays with them after the Lions.
He does promotional work in Dublin as well, so he's obviously got a base here in terms... He hangs out with the Leinster, with the guys on the lines. I mean, he's obviously a personable guy, so I think he's mad to stay in Cardiff. I mean, mad.
Well, we shall see.
I suppose the other fixture of the weekend is Ulster playing Edinburgh. Like, it's a chance for them to get their show back on the road.
And they're at home as well.
They're at home, yeah.
2 weeks in a row against the Scottish teams at home. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, before we go, just a quick prediction for our big match in the
no bonus points win for Leinster. For anyone. No bonus points for anyone.
Yeah, I'd kind of go with that as well. My heart would say that, my head would say that. My heart would say, "Oh God, please let us win."
I'd say scores could well be multiples of 3 on both sides.
Quite possibly. Yeah, it could be a stodge fest.
Yeah. I'm going to go with 15-6. Yeah.
Okay, I won't argue with that, Dave.
Well, thanks again, lads. And thanks a million for watching. Cheers.